Governor Abbott's initiative, Empowering Texas Taxpayers, launched on November 9, 2025, represents a significant move in Texas politics, but it also exemplifies what many critics describe as institutionalized system moral hazard. As we delve into the nuances of this initiative, it becomes evident that it is a continuation of a long-standing trend. The strategy mirrors a pattern of deferring accountability to future administrations, hoping that the established systems which have benefited Governor Abbott, dating back to his tenure as the Texas Attorney General, will remain intact until he steps down from his role. The underlying aim appears to be the preservation of his political legacy, which raises critical questions about the fiscal responsibility and ethical governance in Texas. Abbott has developed a plan aimed at addressing public concerns over property taxation, yet it seems to be an extension of the previous shortcomings of Texas' property tax system. Over the years, modifications have been made to property taxation policies, introduced under the guise of progress. These modifications include school choice, increased homestead exemptions, caps on property values, and the establishment of appraisal review board panels, all of which critics argue serve merely to placate the taxpayers while obscuring the underlying issues. One must consider the greater implications of these policies. They seem designed to mask the increasing demands placed on school districts, which are struggling under the weight of debt and what some allege to be fraudulent bond practices. The reality is stark. As taxpayers face soaring property valuations that do not reflect their actual income or the economic climate, the burden of supporting struggling school districts is shifted onto the shoulders of homeowners. The fact that nearly 37.8% of households could face eviction or bankruptcy as a consequence of these policies is a pressing concern that cannot be overlooked. Abbott's administration, alongside key figures such as State Comptroller Glenn Hagar and Attorney General Ken Paxton, is said to have played a role in perpetuating a cycle where the citizens of Texas are left vulnerable to financial instability due to systemic fraud. The implications of such actions are severe. A flawed tax system that taxes unrealized gains violates the 16th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, undermining the very fabric of fair taxation. This entrenched issue raises ethical questions about the motives behind Abbott's proposals and the sustainability of the educational financing model. The 6 pillars of Abbott's plan deserve scrutiny. The first pillar, proposing two-thirds voter approval for local taxes, sounds appealing at first glance, but raises concerns about the fairness and uniformity of taxation. In theory, it appears democratic, but the reality is that relying on subjective voting leaves room for discrepancies and inequities. True reform would involve a more comprehensive approach, like the proposed repeal of property tax in favor of a uniform state sales tax, a move that would eliminate the burden of taxation based on property ownership. Next, the second pillar introduces local spending limits, a nod to accountability. However, the historical context reveals a troubling trend. School districts have been allowed to finance their operations through increasingly complex and misleading financial instruments, leading to a growing bureaucracy disconnected from educational standards. This trend has eroded public trust, and limiting spending without addressing the root causes of financial mismanagement may not be sufficient for long-term reform. The third pillar, which suggests rolling back taxes through citizen petitions, also raises questions. In recent years, property values have reportedly inflated due to questionable practices, resulting in greater theft from the public through overvaluation and excessive taxation. Rolling back to previous valuations feels inadequate when one considers the depth of the fraud involved. The challenge remains: how do property owners reclaim the wealth that has unjustly been extracted from them? The fourth pillar brings in the notion of a 5-year appraisal cycle, but the subjective nature of property appraisals leaves much to be desired. Any value assigned by external parties with financial incentives can be seen as dubious at best. True appraisals should be transparent and governed by standards that eliminate conflicts of interest. Without such reforms, the idea of a 5-year cycle risks perpetuating the same issues, rather than resolving them. The fifth pillar attempts to cap appraisal growth at 3%, a proposition that sounds reasonable but fails to factor in economic realities. In times of economic downturn, property values could fall dramatically, making such a cap unrealistic and potentially detrimental to the property market. Finally, the sixth pillar proposes the elimination of school property taxes for homeowners, an objective goal that could be achieved through a more transparent sales tax system. However, without a strategic framework to ensure the financial health of school districts, this measure alone could jeopardize the quality of education. Every element of Abbott's Empowering Texas Taxpayers initiative, when closely examined, reveals layers of complexity and potential deception. The approach seems to pacify the public with proposals that offer little substantial change while mask deeper systemic issues. The crux of the problem lies not just in the policies themselves, but in the broader failure of the Texas legislature to address the core problems of fraudulent school district debt and accountability. As Abbott gears up for his re-election campaign, the question remains whether he will seize this opportunity to redefine his legacy by addressing the long-standing issues plaguing Texas's property tax system. A tangible step forward could involve undertaking a comprehensive contract with Texas property owners, emphasizing fiscal responsibility and accountability without fine print. This commitment could promise the repeal of property taxes in favor of a more equitable, uniform state sales tax, thus restoring the citizens' trust and confidence in their government. In this moment of political change, Abbott's contract could serve as a foundation for substantial reform by inviting legislators and citizens alike to engage in a dialogue about true fiscal responsibility. A pledge to uphold transparency and integrity in Texas government would resonate with voters tired of broken promises and ineffectual policies. As we approach the forthcoming election, the challenge lies in holding our elected officials accountable, not just for their promises, but for their actions. If Governor Abbott is genuinely interested in protecting his legacy, now is the time for him to advocate for the reforms that restore fairness, equity, and trust in the Texas taxation system. The future of Texas property owners hangs in the balance, and the time for meaningful change is now.